and friends. I am very delighted to be here this evening to participate in the launch of the Telugu edition of Breaking Barriers, an autobiography of Shimadhara Garu. I am really happy that the Telugu version has come out as quickly as it has, because I think it is very important that a large number of people of this state and IAS officers of both Telangana and Andhra particularly should, a state that Shimadhara served so well, must get to read. I do hope that it can be translated into Hindi as well, as many issues that have been raised and things said would resonate with the poor and the marginalized communities in UP, Bihar and other states like Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, etc. Breaking Barriers is a masterly book. It is actually difficult to write autobiographies without often ending up as a justification for whatever one has done or not, and could also become highly subjective and biased of the way in which events are presented. It is for this reason that autobiographies are not taken very seriously when it comes to analyzing data or facts. But of late, there has been a trend of trying to understand history through individual stories. In fact, very recently, a well-known historian has written a book called The Story, which is nothing but the world story, which is nothing but testimonies and life stories of individuals constructing the history of the times. Shimadhara Garu's book would be of that genre. In reading his story, one gets a deep understanding of the times he worked in and is invaluable for that one reason. And what were the times? If getting political independence in 1947 was one struggle, transforming a poverty-ridden, resourceless, highly feudal country into a modern country, bringing change in the mindset of a people used to treating people as commodities, to be bought and sold in the market, bonded labor system, a mindset where inequality was an accepted norm between men, women, between people on grounds of caste, justified on a religious practice, and thereby keeping a large subset of population without access to the most basic of services that we today take for granted, and in such a society and mindset, embed ideas of equality, secularism and humanism was a very difficult process that has still not been finished. Inequality based on incomes and caste continued to prevail and dictate a political discourse in the most brazen manner. Making it worse, we have now added religion. And today we have individuals whose helping the poor is seen as a sin, and access to the rights of the Constitution provides that a Constitution provides them, ends up locking them up in jail on trumped-up charges and planting evidence. One can imagine what it must have been for a Dalit officer working for the poor in a far more feudal state and a feudal social context 40 years ago. The amount of courage that it would have required. But then in the story of Shimadhara Rao, being pejoratively called a Naxalite, at the end of it, there were also individuals of conscience. It's a very interesting little story and anecdote that Shimadhara Garu relates, where he refers to a petition that was put against him by the vested interests of Warangal, calling him a Naxalite, to the President of India, and the IB officer then sends it to the local officer in Warangal for a report. And had this local officer said, yes, he is a Naxalite, which is what would happen today probably, he could have been dismissed for hobnobbing with anti-national forces. But then there was conscience, and that lowly inspector of Warangal wrote what was the truth, and that's how the petition couldn't go any further than what it did, and Shimadhara Garu was allowed to continue. So there were people like that, and throughout the autobiography, Shimadhara Garu brings out these small anecdotes where there were individuals who were still wanting to live by principles and by their own value systems. That is fast disappearing today. So as one goes through his book, one cannot but compare to what were those times to what we have now, I would say, fallen down to. Shimadhara Garu's life is a dramatic in its sweep, from being the son of illiterate farm laborers and struggling to get access to education, living at the edge in a very demotivating conditions, but doggedly pursuing his dreams of being educated and moving on in life to becoming a chief secretary of an important state and shaping its destiny. It is dramatic and mind-boggling. While reading the book, I kept thinking of the quality of what was Sri Madhavarao's mind, his persistence, his self-discipline, his stubbornness, his spirit to never look back, but at the same time keeping his sensitivity and his humane considerations with him all the time, not allowing power or attention or the service to destroy his fundamental values of a human being. Now this is his greatness, because I can tell you I know many IAS officers who have also come from a similar background but forgotten their roots and not really doing very much for the community or for the poor as such. That is also one other side of the reality. So when Mr. Raja and other speakers have referred to that sensitivity and that humaneness of Mr. Madhavrao and his own disdain for power, it never sat on his shoulders. It is really shows a very, very great attitude and a great mindset, which is becoming very rare nowadays. I found the book fascinating, and though I was personally aware of several of the instances cited and some of his relationships with people like S.R. Shankaran Garu, yet when reading it in the form of his story, it brought back memories and a great sense of admiration. When the whole experience is summed up in the manner it has become, it became at once very powerful and very poignant for me. And you have to understand, for me, why it was so important is that people like Mr. Shankaran and Mr. Madhavrao, who is 12 years my senior, they were the ones who inspired a whole generation of IAS officers like me. So when he talks about his collector days and the way in which Mr. Vengal Rao transferred him, same thing happened to me in Vijayawada. I was also very inspired sub-collector and inspired by Mr. Madhavrao's stories which I used to hear, Mr. Shankaran's stories which I used to hear. So I also went because I was brought up in an atmosphere of Delhi. I had no knowledge of the struggles or the poverty or the discrimination or the caste system that was there in rural India. And from that kind of a mindset, when I just through sheer hearing about what these people were doing was so inspiring that I also did land assignment, and I also fought those landed interests. And I remember it was emergency at that time, and I, as a chairperson of the cooperative bank in Vijayanagaram, gave the first loan to a Dalit, and the Rajus were mad. They were so angry, the whole Raju community, how dare a Dalit gets a loan. And how dare our cooperative bank allows, I mean, those, when I think back, it's amazing how much control these powerful social groups have and how discriminated they can be in their attitude. And that led to my transfer also, sir. Because of you, I too got transferred out quite early in Vijayanagaram. Otherwise, had I been like any other routine officer, I could have had my 2 years of sub-collecting over there. So it was this, the contribution of people like him and Mr. Shankaran was that it was just not me. There were a whole cadre of IAS of the whole generation of them. We all worked on these issues, and we were inspired to understand that as an IAS officer, it is not for the house and the car and the red lights and so on, but that we were catalysts to bring in the social transformation. We were catalysts to bring in social change. And it is our duty as IAS officers to work on bringing the transformative change that independent India had to get. So it was emergency periods, as I said. We had the 20-point program, land distribution to Dalits, minimum wages, and bonded labor eradication were some of the key core principles which we were all inspired to. I mean, I can think of Duviri Subbarao as a collector, and then much later, of course, Raju followed me in Nellore, and all of us worked with that kind of a dedication. And I'm emphasizing this again and again because today the greatest tragedy of the bureaucracy is that my colleagues, younger colleagues, don't have iconic people like Mr. Madhavrao and Mr. Shankaran to follow and guide them. And I'm sorry, but I don't think the bureaucracy is really being able to sustain that momentum of sensitivity for the poor and doing what they can for the poor as it was in our time. So the book is not, if you read the book, it's not, what I liked about this book as opposed to many of the other autobiographies of IAS officers, which can be quite boring, I can tell you, because they all go through the chronological order. When I joined as sub-collector, then I went as joint collector, then I went as PDDRD, and the whole career path they draw you and they tell. But here, Mr. Madhurao's book, I still don't know what he did after his sub-collector, where he was, but because it was basically issue-based, he took up the posts in his book and described where he thought he brought in a change and which were of fundamental importance in his own lifetime. So it was not a chronological order of all the posts that he held, but it was based on the issues that he was able to contribute and where he made a difference to his responsibilities and to the work. And that's what gives value to this autobiography as opposed to other books of similar nature. So it must be read for the several insights that it gives of those times and the struggles of the people who have to cross several barriers of social prejudice, discrimination, marginalization, and poverty. It is necessary to understand these perspectives and so that we can become a kinder and a more sensitive society, more gentler, and where, more important than anything else, believe in fairness and justice. That must really prevail our thinking. Unfortunately, those values are going. I hate to sound negative, but there is no question of trying to deny that there is a big, huge moral vacuum in our society today. So in that context, I agree with Mr. Raja that I think Mr. Madhurao cannot sit back. This book needs to be read, and this book should then inspire many people to have discussions around it, around the issues that have been raised in this book, and remind the people that there is still class-ridden society. We still have huge amount of discrimination and caste prejudices. We are divided by gender, we are divided on caste, we are divided on religion, and literally we need to get society together. And I think if this book could be you need a instrument to initiate a dialogue, and if by his own personal moral authority and using this book, if a discussion around these issues could be initiated, that would be very, very useful, not just question of launching a book for selling it, but having this as the main discussion point to say what are all the issues that we as a society and as citizens we need to really deliberate upon and reflect upon. I do look forward to those kind of future, and I think Mr. Madhurao will have to take the lead because it is his personal experience that he's brought in here. He's a living history, and we need to take maximum advantage of him, of his presence, and try to reconstruct the past into teaching our younger officers and our other citizenry about these very vital issues. Thank you very much, sir, for giving me this opportunity. And I'm sorry if I've taken more time than what you had asked us to. Okay. But
if you like this video, please like it, share it, and for more videos, please subscribe to our channel.